The auction platform shimmered under too many lights, refracting rainbows off every mirrored surface until the whole arena looked like the inside of a jewel box. The air carried a chemical sweetness, like a dying flower doused in perfume. Somewhere, beneath the scent of engineered ozone and freshly scorched metal, Ellie could still smell fear, sweaty, salt-heavy, entirely human. She didn't look at the other two girls. That was Rule 1, don't connect. Not visibly. They were trembling beside her, both younger than her by at least 5 years, wrapped in sheer fabrics that passed for dresses on this side of the galaxy. Stage props. Helplessness as spectacle. Lot 489, the display tag at her feet read in 6 major trade tongues. Below it, human female, unclaimed. Verified fertile. Mild combat damage. Ellie breathed slowly through her nose, jaw tight. Mild combat damage. That meant the scars on her spine. The old fracture in her left wrist. The way her kneecap clicked when she pivoted wrong. She'd earned all of it. 5 years in the Earth fleet before they declared her dead and gone. Or perhaps just sold her. The auctioneer, a being best described as a gelatinous squid in high heels, slithered forward atop a mobile podium that glided like a dancer. Its voice oozed from 6 speakers around the platform. Every word echoed in multiple frequencies for multi-species digestion. A rarity, it announced, a surviving Terran. Native to the Sol Fringe, formerly known for curiosity, fire, and an inappropriately persistent evolutionary drive. The crowd rumbled, a blend of clicks, moans, and chirping exhalations. Alien eyes blinked in all directions. There were teeth that weren't mouths, mouths that weren't faces, and some creatures that merely absorbed information through scent or vibration. This was the auction's elite row. The ones who could afford indulgences. She's got bones, one furry diplomat muttered, as if this were concern. Sharp ones. A banker from the syndicate of scaled interests leaned forward. But look how small. You could keep her on a leash. Someone behind him chuckled, a deep, gravelly chuff. You'd better hope the leash holds. Ellie didn't blink. She stood with her weight evenly distributed between both feet, shoulders relaxed. She kept her gaze forward and her expression dull. It was not submission, it was a mask. Let them see what they wanted. Let them underestimate. It was safer that way. A translator drone flitted past her head, buzzing with static. The smaller of the 2 girls, lot number 490, let out a sharp whimper. Ellie didn't flinch. She didn't offer comfort. That would draw attention, and attention was the last thing she needed right now. The auctioneer continued its pitch. Note the curvature of the cranium, the bipedal symmetry, classic primate stubbornness. We recommend early reconditioning. Early reconditioning. Ellie knew what that meant. Pain, chemicals, and neural wipes administered while the body was still digesting trauma. She'd seen what it turned people into. Not monsters. Monsters had sharp teeth. Reconditioned humans just smiled too easily. A screen above the platform flickered to life, showcasing grainy footage from Earth's last confirmed broadcast. A city in flames. Someone shouting. A child holding a sign in English. We are not extinct. The crowd cooed as if watching a pet trick. Ellie smiled faintly. That child was her niece. Bidding opens at 3,000 units, the auctioneer declared. A bargain for a combat-tested relic of a dead planet. The first bid came from a many-limbed creature with eyes like cracked emeralds. It raised a tentacle. Then another followed, and another. Ellie kept her breath steady as the numbers rose. She didn't care who won her. Not really. What mattered came later. At 7,400 units, a pause fell. The crowd had settled into that expectant hush, like beasts scenting blood. Everyone knew what came next. Entertainment exhibition requested. A voice crackled from the high box above. Ellie's heart slowed. Lot 489 is to participate in a commemorative duel against our festival's champion. The voice continued. By decree of Imperial Spectacle Law, all combat is non-lethal unless circumstances deem otherwise. The auctioneer shimmered, pleased. A splendid surprise. A mammal melee. Another wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. Some even applauded. Ellie tasted bile. They thought this was still a game. Behind her, one of the girls whimpered again. Ellie turned just enough to meet her eye. No words, just a glance. Stay still. Stay breathing. Stay invisible. Guards descended in pairs, four-legged ones with blades for arms, and bipedal ones with electric pulse staves. They didn't touch Ellie. They knew better. Instead, they formed a polite yet unmistakable corridor. This was her cue. She stepped forward, bare feet silent on the shimmering floor. The girls behind her disappeared from view. The crowd buzzed louder. One announcer's voice boomed overhead, enthusiastic and shrill. Behold, a human defector, a soldier, a curiosity from a bygone war. Ellie kept walking. They didn't ask if she agreed. They didn't care. She was property, and property fought when ordered. In the corridor's shadowed bend, a guard handed her a piece of armor, if one could call it that. A thin shoulder pauldron, ceremonial in design and completely useless in practice. She accepted it with a nod and didn't bother fastening it. "Want a knife?" the guard asked. Its voice filtered through layers of static. "Only if it comes with a warranty," she replied. It blinked. Humans joke in crisis. Fascinating. Only the good ones. Another turn. Another burst of arena light ahead. Ellie emerged onto a sandglass platform flanked by rising tiers of seating. Cameras swiveled. Screens blinked her image at magnified scale. Someone had adjusted the lighting to highlight her jawline. Great. She was being packaged for export. Across the arena, a larger gate opened. The champion stepped through. 9 feet tall, glistening with natural armor, plating that shifted between obsidian and sapphire tones. Groshtal was a beast bred for violence. He carried a ceremonial hammer in one hand, nearly as tall as Ellie, and flexed a set of mandibles as wide as her shoulders. The crowd roared. Chants started. Groshtal raised both arms and basked in the sound. Ellie rolled her eyes. "Overcompensating," she muttered. Groshtal turned toward her. For a brief second, their eyes met. His were deep red, predatory, curious. She gave him a half nod. Not challenge, not surrender, just readiness. A gong sounded. Metal, deep and resonant. The match began. Groshtal didn't charge. Interesting. Instead, he circled, slowly, like a dancer used to applause. She mirrored his pace. Sand crunched beneath her feet. The arena shimmered around them, hot from overhead lights. Sweat gathered between her shoulder blades. He lunged. She dodged. The crowd gasped. He swung wide, the hammer slicing air. She ducked low, pivoted, kicked up sand, then rolled under his legs. Her foot connected with a pressure point behind his knee. He grunted. That got his attention. She scrambled backward, putting 5 meters between them. Groshtal paused. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. It was a horrible, echoing, insectal sound. Ellie smiled without humor. Let them watch. Let them cheer. Let them believe this was a show. She was counting every step, every breath, every weakness. The moment would come. The audience didn't see it yet, but it was coming. And when it did, she wouldn't be property anymore. She'd be a warning. Groshtal's laughter still echoed off the arena walls when Ellie ducked his next swing and rolled beneath the arc of his hammer. Dust scattered in a plume around her, the sting of fine glass granules catching in her throat. She didn't cough. She trained that impulse out of herself years ago. A feint to her left brought his guard down. She didn't take the opening. Not yet. Instead, she planted her feet and stared up at him. In that moment, the laughter started to die in the crowd. She could feel the temperature of attention shifting, away from entertainment toward unease. She turned her shoulder to avoid a downward strike that would have collapsed a lesser fighter's spine. It slammed into the floor beside her, shaking the platform. A hair slower than he should have been. He had power, but he didn't expect her to still be standing, which made him dangerous. The kind of opponent who got mean when confused. She circled again, not too fast, letting him think she was keeping her distance out of fear. That was fine. Fear made her forgettable, unimportant. Forgettable things were allowed to get close. and close was where she was lethal. She tasted metal in her mouth, blood from where she'd bitten the inside of her cheek during the last fall. Her lip didn't tremble. That kind of pain was old hat. Years ago, in Earth Fleet Special Reconnaissance, she'd taken a shard of tungsten through her thigh and still carried her squad leader out of a collapsed bunker. That scar was still there, beneath the synthetic silk someone had decided was appropriate auction wear. Ellie Tamura, ex-combat specialist. Officially Kia 3 years ago. Unofficially, sold to the same Imperial black market node that now broadcast her to 37 inhabited systems as this week's barbaric entertainment. She hadn't cried then, either. She remembered the moment they drugged her, soft sting of a needle, then the folding sensation of blackout. Waking up in chains had been less frightening than it should have been. Because she wasn't afraid. Not really. Not of monsters who thought strength meant volume. Not of a crowd that mistook civilization for spectacle. She was afraid of failing. Failing those 2 girls backstage who looked at her like she might be more than a ghost. Grashtal swung again. Sloppy. Frustrated. His weight shifted too far forward on his lead foot. She catalogued it. He growled something in a language meant to be heard through bone. Ellie just tilted her head. That the best you got? Gasps from the audience. The translator drones scrambled to catch up. Half the arena missed the words, but not the tone. Grashtal snarled and came in fast. A rush. She let him hit her. Not hard. Just enough. The hammer caught her in the side as she twisted, redirecting its force with a spiraling fall. She went down in a tumble, caught herself on one hand, and slid backward on purpose, kicking up dust. It looked good. Painful. Pitiful. The crowd erupted in laughter and mock cheers. Perfect. Let them laugh. Let Grashtal believe. She lay still for a beat too long. The kind of stillness they teach in stealth training. Lax muscles, shallow breath, the illusion of surrender. Grashtal stepped closer. The announcer shouted something triumphant, and cameras zoomed in. Ellie's hand, hidden under her torso, clenched around a piece of arena gravel. She moved. Fast. A twist, a spin on her good knee, and she launched the gravel directly into Grashtal's left eye cluster. Not to injure, just to distract. He reared back, howling, and in that beat of imbalance, she slipped behind him and kicked the nerve joint beneath the second vertebral plate. Once. Hard. His right leg locked. He stumbled. 2 more steps, and she was on him, grabbing the joint of his arm where his weapon wasn't, driving her elbow up into a nerve bundle beneath the carapace. His roar cracked a pane of glass in the lower rows. Then she was back again, out of range. Not a killing move. Just enough to remind him that she wasn't prey. Grashtal circled again, but he wasn't grinning anymore. She could see confusion. Rage. Maybe the first hint of fear. And maybe, just maybe, respect. The arena had gone oddly quiet. In the box above, several Imperial dignitaries were murmuring into their communates. She didn't look up, but she could feel their attention shift. The human wasn't dying on cue. Worse, she was calculating. Betting odds were changing. She could feel that too. One wrong move now, and the match would end the way they wanted it to end. Not a clean loss. A punishment. So Ellie waited. Grashtal steadied himself. He raised his hammer again, this time not in wild rage, but with a little more caution. Good. Let him adapt. The more he tried to fight smart, the easier it became to outthink him. He came at her slower now, with intention. But she had mapped his range already, catalogued the slight delay in his pivoting right leg, the overcompensation in his strikes. She could time it. When the swing came, she ducked low, faked a stumble, then vaulted straight up into his chest, letting his own momentum take him off balance. She twisted midair, hooked her legs around his neck, and spun, her whole body becoming a lever. The sound of him hitting the ground echoed like thunder. The crowd lost its mind. Ellie stood slowly, not triumphant, just efficient. Grashtal groaned, pushing himself up, dazed. She stepped back, giving him space. He looked at her with a strange new expression, not hatred, not pride, something older. Maybe he recognized her now, not as a curiosity, but as a soldier. The announcer didn't know what to say. The auctioneer was whispering urgently into a comm device. She didn't care. Her blood was hot, her breath steady. Every cell in her body ached for the fight to end, but she knew the end would not come easy. Not here. Not when the Empire's champion had been publicly embarrassed. And yet, it wasn't about the fight anymore. It was about message. Because behind every screen, somewhere on a dozen backwater planets and listening posts, there were humans watching. Hidden, banned, scattered across galaxies, they were still watching. And when they saw her, bloody, bruised, but unbowed, they'd remember that they hadn't all been broken. That Earth might be ash, but Earth's daughters hadn't forgotten how to make someone bleed. Groshtal rose. She watched him, ready. But this time, something changed. He dropped the hammer. It clattered to the floor, a heavy sound that rang out like a bell. A hush fell over the crowd. Groshtal took one step forward, chest heaving, eyes locked with hers. Then he nodded once, low and grim, and turned his back. Ellie didn't move. The crowd erupted. Some in anger, some in awe. Bets overturned. Shouts of scandal. Accusations of dishonor. The arena guards flinched, waiting for orders. But Groshtal didn't look back. And Ellie? She stood alone, still lot 489 on the registry, but something very different now in the eyes of the galaxy. She'd earned a name again. That was the first step. She walked slowly toward the exit gate, blood drying on her ribs, throat burning, but spine straight. The next step would come soon. And when it did, the Empire would learn what Earth's ghosts were really for. The medics didn't know what to do with her. That much was obvious the moment Ellie limped into the recovery chamber and sat, uninvited, on the nearest bench. Her blood was drying in elegant drips across one shin, and one of her fingers was swollen at the knuckle, likely dislocated. She ignored it. The two triage bots hovered near her, blinking hesitant lights, before silently retreating. They'd scanned her, noted the injuries weren't fatal, and decided, wisely, not to interfere. Ellie sat still for a long time, not meditating, calculating. Pain blurred around the edges of her thoughts, but didn't penetrate. That was rule number 1. Don't let them see you count. The counting had to stay inside. 8 cameras in the room. For vents. 1 air return wide enough for a body her size, if she broke her shoulders first. She mentally cataloged the injuries. Bruised ribs, sprained wrist. Shallow lacerations across her hip and shoulder. Nothing fatal. Nothing permanent. Not yet. A chime echoed. Not a polite one. This was the kind of sound designed by a species that thought volume equaled importance. A heavy, clanking door hissed open, and through it came a figure she'd expected and still hoped wouldn't show. Commander Silith of the Imperial Entertainment Commission. Tall, thin, almost serpentine in posture. Dressed in ceremonial bronze robes and glass-threaded armor. His skin had the texture of wet sandpaper, and his eyes blinked horizontally. He stopped just short of the blood trail she'd left on the floor. Human. Ellie raised an eyebrow. Still am. Sorry to disappoint. That display, he said, voice as oily as engine runoff, was unauthorized. Winning. Embarrassing the champion. She flexed her fingers. Same thing, I guess. He didn't laugh. Predators rarely did when you bit back. Silith stepped closer, hands clasped. We had a narrative, you see. A tragic symbol of Earth's collapse. A fitting spectacle of mammalian struggle. A brief flash of fight before extinction. Your victory was untidy. You're upset that I didn't die correctly. Your performance has complicated, ongoing diplomatic relations. Ellie stood, slowly. She met his gaze without flinching, though she hated the chemical sharpness of his breath. I'm not your story. No, Silith admitted. But you will be useful. She said nothing. He tapped something into a glass slate. Her profile appeared, name, designation, lot number, auction price, updated market value. The value had quadrupled since the fight. You've been reassigned, he said flatly. Effective immediately. To what? Silith smiled. His teeth were too wet. The deliberation games. Higher stakes. Less mercy. Ellie didn't respond, but her pulse slowed. That was rule number 2. Never react before you understand the angles. Behind him, a hollow panel shimmered. Betting odds were already being recalculated. Her image looped on a dozen screens. Her final kick, the dodge, the reversed grip on Groshtal's wrist, the body slam. All choreographed like she was some kind of cosmic ballet dancer instead of a soldier trying not to die. The narrative had shifted. The audience no longer saw a victim. They saw something else. A problem. A human problem. She'd fought too well to be dismissed. That meant she'd be pitted against harder enemies. It meant more cameras, more eyes, more analysis. And behind all of it, the real risk, the chance that someone in the higher circles would recognize her for what she truly was. Not a survivor, not a gladiator, but a tactician. She needed to disappear before they figured it out. Silith left without another word. The door closed behind him like the ceiling of a tomb. Alone again, Ellie exhaled. Her dislocated finger, still slightly bent, throbbed. She bent it backward until it popped into place. The pain surged like fire, then dulled. She flexed it once. That was better. The medbots whirred quietly in the corner, still not approaching. She didn't need them. What she needed was a plan. The deliberation games. She remembered the term from Fleet intelligence briefs. A once secret venue for testing dangerous prisoners and political rivals. Now a sanctioned blood sport broadcast to half the empire. It was where they sent species who wouldn't bend. Where defiance was measured in limbs lost. And where occasionally someone slipped through the cracks and came out alive. But never human. Never twice. She needed allies. Which meant she needed leverage. Ellie ran her hands along the underside of the bench, checking for weaknesses in the paneling. No tools. No loose bolts. Damn. Then again, rule number 3. When you don't have the right weapon, make the wrong one work twice. Another chime. Another door. This time, it wasn't a commander. It was a girl. One of the others from the auction. Not the youngest, the middle one. Maybe 16, maybe 17. Pale. Freckled. Shaking with a kind of practiced terror. The girl stepped in like a shadow, then froze when she saw Ellie. For a moment, neither moved. Then the girl's voice cracked. "Are you really from Earth?" Ellie nodded. "You." She nodded quickly. "Nevada sector. Mining colony. I was born after it all went bad." Ellie stepped forward, slowly. "What's your name?" "Anna." Her eyes darted to the walls. "They told me if I didn't cooperate, I'd end up in the pit. They brought you here to frighten me," Ellie said softly. Anna blinked. "What?" "They want me to care about someone." Ellie looked away. "That makes it easier to control me later." I'm sorry." "Don't be." Ellie's voice sharpened. "You still have a choice. You listen to me, you stay alive." "Got it." Anna swallowed. "Okay." Ellie didn't smile, but her voice softened. "Good." Anna sat across from her, perched like a bird, too aware of hawks. "You really beat him? The champion?" "Yes." "How?" Ellie considered for a moment. "Then, I counted." Anna looked confused. "Counted what?" "Everything." Ellie tapped her temple. His footfalls. His recovery time. The angle of his shoulder rotation. "I counted where the pain would hit and where his confidence would crack." "You fought like a calculator. More like a clock. Right gears. Right rhythm." Anna was quiet for a long moment. "Then, they're scared of you." Ellie nodded. "They should be." A warning flashed on the wall. Her transport to the deliberation arena would arrive in 20 minutes. Enough time to rest. To think. Maybe to bleed. But she wouldn't give them that pleasure. Anna looked at the clock. "What do I do?" "You disappear." Ellie stood. "Find the kitchens. Hide near the freight lifts. Never tell them who sent you. But if they catch me, if they catch you, you say you were cleaning blood. They like that. Makes them feel tidy." Anna hesitated. Then, surprisingly, she stood straighter. "You think we're going to make it?" Ellie turned to the door. "No." Anna's face fell. "But we're going to make them regret trying." Anna smiled, small, broken, but genuine. Ellie didn't watch her leave. She didn't watch anything for a long while. Just stood in the quiet chamber, with her thoughts ticking down in neat precision. There were no reinforcements coming. No cavalry. Earth had scattered like a kicked anthill. If anyone was watching, they were watching from the shadows, which meant she needed to send a signal. The deliberation games would be her broadcast, not of despair, of math, of violence, sharpened to the edge of a formula. She would make them remember who humans had been, and who they still could be. The deliberation arena was nothing like the auction ring. The auction had been spectacle dressed as cruelty, brutality wrapped in silk. This was cruelty stripped bare, cold metal walls, harsh downward lights. No crowd in attendance except those allowed behind sealed glass. The rest of the empire watched remotely, faces lit by the ghost light of projected bloodshed. Here, there would be no applause. Only records, only wagers, and corpses. Ellie stood alone on the transport platform as it rattled through the black tunnel that brought her to the center ring. She could hear the soft hiss of breath recyclers overhead, the thrum of containment fields humming beneath her boots. Her wrists were unbound now, not generosity, but calculation. They'd learned by now that she didn't run. She didn't need to. The wall ahead of her cracked open with a sigh of pressure release, and light stabbed into the corridor. A slow mechanical voice announced her arrival in 5 languages. It didn't use her name. Combat Unit 489, Human Origin, Soul Fringe. Combat Record, Intermittent. Previous Performance, Disruptive. Ellie stepped forward. The arena wasn't sand this time. It was polished obsidian tile, laced with electric lines that pulsed when touched. She clocked a faint shimmer in the air, partial gravity manipulation field. Smart. It would throw off muscle memory. She adjusted her stride. Across the chamber, her opponent emerged from their own gate. Her mouth went dry. It wasn't Groshtal. It wasn't a second-tier champion or some new monstrosity genetically tailored for intimidation. It was a human, tall, broad-shouldered, clad in armor far more advanced than hers. Black Earth Fleet plating, with only minimal scarring. She'd seen that kind of gear before years ago, on Black Ops specialists, ghost units. The man didn't flinch at the sight of her. He nodded once. "Ellie Tamura," he said, through the amplifier built into his collar. She blinked. "You know me?" His voice was steady. "Used to serve under Commander Masari. You were her strategist." "Used to. They said you were dead." She tilted her head. "You're not here for a reunion, are you?" "No," he looked down briefly. "I'm here to kill you." She believed him. Above them, the announcer's voice chimed again. "Empire versus Empire. Intraspecies challenge accepted. Earth origin combatant versus Earth origin defector." Defector. Ellie smiled bitterly. This was new. Bold. The Empire hadn't been able to discredit her as a curiosity. Couldn't make her disappear without drawing attention. So they would redefine her. Let her be beaten by one of her own. Let her die by a human hand and label it betrayal. Let Earth see it as proof of weakness. That was the game now. She shifted her stance. "Name?" she asked. He hesitated. "Noah." "Unit designation?" "Classified." Ellie nodded. "Fine." There wasn't a countdown. There wasn't a starting bell. He moved first. Fast. She ducked low, felt his punch skim past her shoulder. It came with enhanced force, armor-assisted. She tucked and rolled, rising behind him with a sharp kick toward his unarmored knee. He blocked, pivoted, slammed an elbow toward her ribs. Pain exploded down her side. She gritted her teeth. They circled again. He didn't taunt her, didn't speak. His face was locked in something worse than anger, regret. Which meant he didn't want to kill her, which meant she could use that. "You believe the Empire's version of what happened to Earth?" she asked between breaths. His eyes flickered. "I believe what I saw." "Tell me." He struck again. She dodged barely. "They showed us the footage," he said. "The human strikes against Empire civilians. Massacres. Retaliations. Empire footage." He paused. "Did you see what happened before that?" He didn't answer. She pressed. "Did they show you the children in cages?" "The auctions." He hesitated again. It was all the opening she needed. She feinted left, then went low. slid between his legs, twisted, and drove her elbow into the small of his back where the armor didn't reach. He dropped to one knee. Her knee was on his spine in a blink, one hand gripping his helmet. But she didn't finish it. Instead, she whispered, "You're not here because you defected. You're here because they lied to you." His voice was quiet. "I can't go back. Neither can I." They froze in that posture, her above, him vulnerable, until he surged upward and threw her off with a burst of powered strength. She hit the floor hard, shoulder dislocating with a pop. She rolled instinctively, favoring the injured arm. He stood, breathing hard. "They said you killed your whole unit. I was the only one who survived. They said you triggered the collapse of Outpost 9. I watched them sell the survivors to slavers." The lights overhead pulsed. A warning. They were taking too long. The match wasn't providing enough blood for the viewers. Noah looked at her, and something shifted behind his eyes. Not belief, but doubt. And doubt was dangerous. She got to her feet, arm hanging, ribs cracked, knees scraped raw. He raised his fists again. "I can't lose this." "Why?" "They have my brother," he said. Ellie exhaled. That was it. Leverage. They were still playing their oldest game. "You kill me," she said, "they kill him anyway. After they're done showing off." "You don't know that." "I do." Another pause. Then he charged again. This time, she didn't dodge. She stepped into it. His fist connected with her jaw. She twisted with the momentum and used the spin to drive her good arm up under his helmet seal. Her fingers reached the neural junction. He froze. She could kill him, easily. Instead, she pressed the edge of her fingernail against the access plate and whispered, "We can make this look good. I fall. You walk away clean. Let them think you're the killer. They'll scan my vitals. Not if you spike them first. I've read the suit models. Internal temp override." He stared at her. "Why help me?" "Because you're not my enemy," she said. "You're just what they pointed." Silence again. Then he disengaged. Stepped back. She dropped like deadweight, let her head bounce off the floor with a crack. Her shoulder screamed. She didn't blink. Blood trickled from her mouth. From the walls, applause erupted, automated, synthetic, programmed for volume. The announcer declared him victor. The doors opened. He walked out without looking back. She lay there, still as death, every nerve screaming. After a long moment, the medbots came. They didn't speak. They lifted her on a gurney, attached leads, injected something warm into her veins. She let herself drift, but not far, because she could hear something. Not just the bots, not just the arena. Voices, real ones, from inside the walls. Someone arguing, sharp, clipped words in an imperial dialect. A command, then another voice, lower, human, broadcast it. She blinked. The lights flickered, and then the room shifted. A new screen unfolded above her head, one she hadn't seen before. The Empire's emergency network. And on that screen, Earth. Not old Earth. Not archive footage. Not ruins. Ships. Hundreds of them. Decloaking over 17 trading moons simultaneously. Human ships. Her breath caught. Another image followed. Planetary installations struck with kinetic pulses. Weapons fired directed with surgical precision. No civilian targets. Just military command, infrastructure, weapon stores. Another feed. A child, one of the girls from the auction, being let out of a holding cage by soldiers in Earth Fleet armor. Ellie smiled. Just a little. It hadn't been a message to her. It had been a message from her. They saw her fight. They saw her survive. And they responded. The screen blinked again. And now the room was filled with a single phrase, echoing from every speaker. "We brought daughters. You started a war." Ellie lay back on the table. The war had already begun. And this time, they weren't coming to beg. They were coming to win.